Hey, everybody, coming to you again. Just wanted to give a little update on street preaching rights. Now, I know that it's against the ordinances of many cities, including Morristown, Tennessee, where I do most of my street preaching in. It's against city ordinances to use a amplified device like an amplified speaker, what you call it, I guess it's called a PA system, things like that, or an electronic bullhorn without a specific permit and an event associated with it. But it's not, of course, street preaching just without any amplification, just regular street preaching on a public sidewalk is the First Amendment and multiple Supreme Court rulings. And I know more about these things now than I did in the past, thank God. Multiple Supreme Court rulings have ruled that street preaching, just in and of itself, is freedom of speech. It is not disorderly conduct, and that the listeners do not have veto power over the preacher, which means that if the listeners are offended by the message or it's quote unquote disturbing their business, as long as you're on a public domain, public sidewalk, public place, they cannot legally stop you from street preaching in and of itself, just street preaching and passing out free gospel tracts without soliciting them, without selling them, just passing them out for free. They cannot stop you legally. They cannot stop you from holding a salvation related sign or a religion related sign, because that falls under the First Amendment, freedom of religion and freedom of speech and freedom of press. And the Supreme Court has ruled over that multiple times. So if a cop arrests you or tries to fine you or even makes a threat of arrest towards you for any of those things, then that's grounds for a lawsuit on your end. And I did not know that as much as I do now 1 year ago. But of course, using amplification is a different story. There are some legal aspects to that, state to state and ordinance to ordinance and all that stuff. So last year I didn't get arrested or anything. I didn't get fined. I didn't get anything like that, but I had gotten cautioned by a police officer, and I won't say his name because I did not record the discussion I should have. I regret that I did not. But I got cautioned by a police officer for using a non-amplified megaphone while I was street preaching. Of course, police officers have drove by me while I'm street preaching. When I was street preaching with that megaphone before this all happened, they drove by me and waved at me and everything, and just smiled and didn't turn their sirens on, nothing, didn't stop and talk to me, didn't do nothing like that. So generally the police didn't have a legal problem with me doing that with a non-amplified megaphone on the public sidewalk, with a cheerleader megaphone as they call it. But after an incident had happened where I was street preaching and a man came to me and started cursing the Lord Jesus and started making homosexual remarks and started saying that he liked and wanted to molest children and things like that and everything. And then when I walked away from him, after rebuking him and calling him wicked, I walked away from him and he grabbed my megaphone and tried to pull it out of my arms and, was trying to assault me. After that, a police officer had told me that I was in the wrong, that I was disturbing his fun. He was trying to have a good time, and that I was disturbing his fun. And it was just one officer that told me this. It wasn't. I'm not speaking for the entire police department, but he told me I was disturbing his time. He was trying to enjoy him a beer, and that even though on the footage which he saw, the guy had made those statements. He said, "Oh, he's just talking smack, but we need to talk about your bullhorn," is what the officer had told me. This was an incident where the things escalated to that. And I told the officer, and I didn't record it, unfortunately, but I told the officer that I would, if it was a problem, to use I corrected him subliminally. I said megaphone. It was not a bullhorn. It was a megaphone. Then I'll just preach without it. And then he proceeded to say, well, and he sighed like he was disappointed that I was going to keep preaching. And he said, I just think you need to try a different approach. You don't want to get people mad. I don't want to get you in trouble. And it could get you for disorderly conduct if you keep these things going. And he's like, you need to preach more about love. Don't preach on hell and sin and things that make people feel uncomfortable. Preach about the love of Jesus. You want people to be drawn in, not turned away. Trying to tell me how to preach when anyway. And this officer had told me that, and he wasn't the only officer involved in that situation, but he's the only officer that that gave me trouble over it. The others involved seemed to be neutral, and they didn't really criticize me or anything. They just, but this one did. And so anyway, so I stopped using my megaphone in Morristown for a year over that. I haven't used my megaphone in Morristown since that event happened. But I did some research on the laws and the city ordinances. And number one, the Supreme Court federal law overrides state and local laws anyway. But the Supreme Court rules that street preachers are allowed to be loud enough to be heard. Okay, and I hear there's people that complain, and they may just be trying to discourage me. I don't know. I don't hear myself out there, so I don't know. But they say, man, nobody hears what you're saying because I'm preaching just with my hand or with my Bible. And they say, and my wife has told me that she hears me just fine driving by and stuff when I'm out there and she's driving or something and going to a store or something, But I mean, there's people say, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. And, the Supreme Court says street preachers can be loud enough to be heard. Okay. Some people's trying to override sound, and the Supreme Court also says they don't have veto power. The listeners do not have veto power to override the street preachers' rights. It's equal. We're equal. We have equal rights to our speech. And so, I get people complain about that, and I looked all this up in the city ordinances of Morristown. And the city ordinance of Morristown had actually says, it prohibits, of course, electronic devices like electronic speakers, but without like a business related permit or something. But it prohibits speakers and bells and things like that, loudspeakers, and yelling and shouting for the purpose of attracting the public to a good that you're trying to sell or to merchandise that you're trying to sell. So it's business related. The noise ordinances against non-amplified yelling and non-amplified speakers are business related. They're not freedom of speech or freedom of religion related. If your religion requires you to street preach, or your religion exercises street preaching, that is protected under the First Amendment and under multiple Supreme Court hearings nationwide. So using a non-amplified megaphone that doesn't really make your sound any more than it already is, it's not a violation even of the local Morristown city ordinance for street preaching purposes. Now, if you're trying to sell something, yeah, it would be. But just preaching the gospel and giving out free salvation literature doesn't fall under that prohibition. So pray for me, brethren, fellow street preachers, that the Lord will give me wisdom about this. I'm really considering using my megaphone again because that cop lied to me, and if I would give his name if I had the discussion recorded, and I would put the discussion on YouTube and all over the internet if it were recorded, but unfortunately, it was not. And I was foolish not to record it. I was too naive, too trusting of police, thinking that they're all good and noble. And they all support. And I've had police officers come up to me and shake my hand and say, hey, we appreciate what you're doing out here preaching the gospel. There's good Christian police officers in Morristown and in every town down here anyway. There's cops that are good Christians, and there's cops that are not Christians but are moral people. Not all of them are corrupt and liars and deceivers and drunkards and Freemasons and all that wicked satanic garbage. But, this one apparently was. But I'm considering going back out, when I go back out to street preach again, when the Lord leads me to, I'm considering taking my non-amplified megaphone back with me so my voice can be heard better. So pray for me on that. Pray for protection. If I go to jail, I'm willing to suffer for the Lord. So thank you, and God bless you.